Hello everyone. In last week's video, I started talking about the topic of attachment, and I had a link to a piece that I did on medium.com. And this week I'm leaving a link to another article on attachments that I also wrote on medium.com. So I'll leave a link to that post if you'd like to read it. And I'm continuing this week on the topic of attachments. In last week's video, I started talking about what attachments were. And in this week's video, I wanted to address the question, so what? What's wrong with having attachments? And I'm going to go into that a little bit more today. So the basic premise here is that an attachment, so the definition that we gave of an attachment is that it's something that you use in order to give yourself a sense of identity or increase your sense of self-worth. So why is that problematic? Why is an attachment problematic? The reason that it's problematic is that you are using something in your outside environment, or it could be in your inside environment, and your internal environment too. But you are using something in order to define yourself. You're constructing a mental definition of who you are based on things and people and ideas. So if that source of your identity disappears from your life, you suffer immensely. And that's basically the main problem with attachments, is that if something in your attachment changes, or if the attachment completely disappears from your life, you suffer immensely. You go through a lot of pain. And I'll give you an example. This occurs a lot in romantic relationships. If you are attached to your partner and your partner wakes up one day and says, "I no longer want to be with you," your life is thrown in complete chaos and you go through periods of immense grief and suffering. Why? Because you were using that person and that relationship in order to define yourself and in order to feel better, feel a higher sense of worth about yourself. So that when the object of your attachment disappears or it changes, there's so much pain that occurs in your life. So you see why attachments are problematic. They're problematic because you're constantly depending on something outside of yourself in order to have a sense of self-worth. And that's completely unnecessary. Nothing that you have in your external environment, whether it be money, whether it be a person, a love, a partner, a car, a house, none of that defines who you are. And the more that you kind of step into these shoes, the less you will invite pain in your life. So now that I've gone through why attachments are problematic, how do you begin to identify them? I love to go into this topic. How do you identify the attachments in your life? Because the truth is, attachments can be so ingrained in us that we can live our lives without even realizing that we have attachments. So the way that I like to test attachments is by asking people to tap into how they feel, especially the emotion fear. The emotion fear is a beautiful indicator of your attachments. If I were talking to you right now and I said, you know, imagine yourself with the love of your life, your partner, your romantic partner, and now let me tell you that that partner disappears from your life, how would you feel? The moment that you can sit with this and you begin to feel fear and panic at the mere possibility that your partner may no longer want to be with you, welcome to an attachment. And that test, you can test with everything else. If you have a beautiful house and you want to test whether you're attached to it, imagine that house burning down. Imagine you come home from work and your house is burned down. Test how that feels. If it begins to cause internal turmoil, you have been introduced to another attachment. So you can go through this test. It's kind of the attachment test, is whether you feel fear, unease, whether you begin to feel rattled internally by the mere thought of an attachment not being in your life anymore. So there you have it. why attachments are problematic, and how you can test whether you have attachments in your life, how many of them you have. And once you start identifying your attachments, then you can begin releasing them. And I'll leave that, I'll leave the advice on how to release attachments for next week. Have a great week, everyone.